so we can save all this information. All right, welcome again, everyone, today. This is presented by the Office of Student Success. I'm your host today. I'm the Assistant Director of Academic Support Services, Marianne Mallon. I help oversee our tutoring team, our peer academic consultants, and also the testing center here at NSU. But once again, we have a very large panel here for you today. Those of you, once again, if you're on the panel, please have your cameras on. If you're not on the panel, you can put your cameras on. That'd be great. If not, it's okay. Once again, sit back and relax and be prepared. I'll be managing the chat, but we'll be saving most of the questions toward the end. All right, so we're going to get started. So we're going to kind of do one by one. We have a large panel, like I said, of introductions, okay? So for those of you who are on the panel, please, one by one, state your name and when you took the MCAT, okay? So whoever would like to start, you know what? I'm going to start with Parth because I saw him on the screen, and then we'll just go from there. So go ahead, introduce yourself, your name, and when you took the MCAT.
Hi, everyone. My name is Parth. I'm a senior right now, and I took the MCAT January 2023, so about a year ago.
Awesome, great.
I guess I can go next. Hey guys, my name is Manis Periboina. I took the MCAT pretty recently, August of 2023.
Great.
Hey guys, I'm Rayhan. I'm a senior currently, and I took the MCAT January 2023 as well.
Hey everyone. My name is Sakith. I took the exam back in March of 2023.
Hi, my name is Abby. I'm a senior right now, and I took my MCAT August 2022, so in my sophomore year.
Are we missing anyone else on our panel? Everyone did their introductions? Okay, all right, great. Once again, lots of information here today. All right, panel. Like I said, it's a lot of y'all, so take your time. I'm gonna throw out these questions here. We'll start with the first question. It's kind of always hard on Zoom because no one wants to interrupt someone, but it's okay. Take your time with these questions, okay? So we're gonna start with the first question. What is the MCAT and what is the material covered on this exam? I know it sounds like common sense for a lot of us who are like on the pre-med track or so on, but if anyone can kind of simplify this or summarize what the MCAT is, go ahead and go.
I guess I can take this first one. So basically the MCAT is like an admissions exam that you can kind of take. You have to take it most of the time, and you take this exam before you apply for medical school or during your application. And yeah, so that's kind of what the MCAT is used for. Aside from that, some of the materials that are like covered in this exam, to break it down into 4 sections. The first section is chemistry and physics. So you'll be covering your organic chemistries, your general chemistries, and obviously physics, the physics 1 and 2 that you would take. That. And then there's the card section, which is like reading comprehension. Then you have a biology and biochem section, which covers obviously bio and biochem. And then you have a psych-soc section, which covers psychology and sociology.
Great. Does anyone want to add to about what the MCAT material is and what's covered?
Yeah, most of it has already been covered, but just a quick addition in terms of timing. So it's a pretty long exam. I think each section is like an hour and a half, and between the first 2 sections, you have a 10-minute break, and between the cars and biochem section, you have like a half an hour lunch break, and then you have another 10-minute break between biochem and psych-soc. So it's one of those where a lot of the practice and a lot of the training is just learning how to build in that stamina and how to like exist and function throughout the entire time. And yeah.
That is a good in-depth one. Awesome.
I guess like one thing I can add is that other than like the cars, which is the reading section, around like 45 questions in your science-based sections will be passage-based. So you're gonna have to like read a passage and like answer the associated questions. And most of the time, like these passage-based questions are just like excerpts from like research studies, or like it's just like like performing an experiment. So there's a lot of reading in the science sections themselves too.
Great. All right. So now we're going to move on to the other question, and this is something will be for our whole panel. Okay. So once again, take your time, very large panel. How long did you study before you attempted to take the exam?
I guess I can get started on this one. So I took the exam January 2023, but I started studying the summer of 2022. I studied just basically the Kaplan books, which we'll probably go into more depth later. Just reviewing all the content I needed to know before taking the exam. And then school started, and then it's from August to like December, I really did like most of my practice, whether that be practice questions or practice tests. And then December, I did like the most amount of like practice and like reviewing right before the exam date.
Um, I guess like one thing I can add is like like throughout college, you're like kind of like studying for this exam. So like when you're taking your pre-med courses, like your gen chems, your orgos, your bios, like all of that content you learn then, you'll probably need to know like the majority of it again. So like yes, you're gonna have like a dedicated study period, but like you could kind of knock out like the majority of like content review kind of just by like studying for your classes, right? Like once you learn something, it's a lot easier to relearn it. So doing well in your classes too, that helps a lot for the MCAT.
Yeah, so actually my planning was quite similar to what Rehan had. I took it in January 2023, and so I had taken a Kaplan like prep course in the summer of 22. And with that I had the books as well. And I was doing most of my content review. And so generally whenever you talk about MCAT prep, it's sort of colloquially split into two things, where you have first is content review, where you go over all the material. And sometimes this is like a deeper review, and sometimes it's more superficial depending on what you know, what you don't know, what you remember and what you don't remember. And then after that, from the start of the semester all the way up until my exam was just practice. So practice exams, practice questions. The good thing I had was because I took it in January, I was pretty close to winter break in terms of the starting of the semester. So winter break was really one of the prime times when I was doing a lot of practice exams and a lot of the hard stuff. And then I took it right at the beginning of the semester. So it was about 4 or 5 months of like actual prep. But I think the type of prep changes over time. And it's not like one day you stop content prep, content review, next day you start doing practice questions. It's more of like a gradual thing. You go, oh, I feel more confident with organic chemistry or biochem or whatever it was. And you start going, okay, let me start phasing out the content review and start doing more questions.
Abby, we'd like to hear from you.
Okay, so I took my exam August 2022. So I was lucky enough to take it over the summer, where I didn't really have to balance like coursework and like worrying about school. So I kind of started studying right when my semester had ended, so about first week of May. And then I took it at the first week of August. So I had about 3 months to prep for my exam.
Anyone else from our panel would like to add to this? Okay. All right, so we will move on to our next question then. What study strategies would you recommend? And once again, this is for everyone on our panel, so everyone just kind of take your time. We're going to start again with Parth. Go ahead.
So in terms of study strategies, it kind of depends on what kind of a studier you are. If you're someone who benefits a lot from practice questions, your will be a little bit heavier weighted on that than content review. But definitely, when you're doing content review, flashcards or like Anki is generally what's recommended. You can find Anki decks that have MCAT review concepts. You know, a lot of people will just start opening the books and just trying to read them cover to cover, which is not something that I would recommend because it's very easy to sort of burn yourself out in the like first month of prep. So it's more of like, oh, I know this more or less, and then this is an area where I struggle a lot. So for example, for me, when I was doing my prep for Chem Phys, it was like fluids. I'm like, I don't know what's happening in fluids. So I opened the Kaplan book and I was reading through fluids, and that was probably one of the only 3 chapters I read in the Chem Phys book, because most of the other stuff I felt fairly confident with. But obviously, as you do more practice questions, you learn where your weaknesses are. One of the more important things, however, is to take regular practice exams. And between each of the practice exams, like really sit down, review and analyze what you did right and what you did wrong. Also reviewing, your timing and things like that. That helps you not only keep a gauge of how you're doing, but also helps you change your direction and pivot if you feel, oh, suddenly your cars is just perfect and you need to move on to something else or focus more on something else. It allows you to make those adjustments rather than just sort of working blindly. But one of the most important things is just balance, because it's very easy, just given the breadth of material, to just want to dive in and not do anything else. And that can lead to a lot of burnout really quickly, especially if you're taking a longer term to study. It's very important that while you're studying, you also make sure that you're incorporating certain things that keep you human, like whatever you like to do, you do that as well.
Okay,
I
next.
also think it was, sorry.
Go Abby.
I think it was really important that Parth had mentioned like burnout. I think that was like a really big thing that I kind of struggled through. And I thought it was really important because I gave myself like a very dedicated 3-month plan, like weekly days and like my daily schedule is kind of scheduled out. And I thought it was really important to give myself like 1 or 2 days a week where I was just doing what Parth said, like doing things that made me active, things that I enjoyed. So I wasn't just studying every single day of the summer. And another thing that Parth had mentioned was about taking regular tests. So when he mentioned like how you have to go through in detail about what you did on your test and what you did wrong. So this is like a 7-hour test. So your review should be like just as long. So when you take the next day to go over your test, you should be going over really in depth and really going over what content did I miss, what questions did I miss, and taking like your time to really go through in detail what you did on your exam wrong and what you did right.
Yeah, and to add to that, like I know both Parth and Abby talked about like the importance of like burnout and things like that. Um, a lot of us as pre-med students or or those of us who are planning on going to med school, we kind of go into school with a mindset of like I'm built different, like I can do this, I can get through it. I can just cram and make it through. And yes, that does work for a lot of classes. But when it comes to MCAT, just cramming, just like saying I'm built different, like I don't care about my mental health for a couple months, I'll be fine, is actually gonna hurt your score at the end. And like giving yourself a little bit of break, giving yourself a break during the day, and keeping yourself sane. I promise you, this exam, I feel like more than not, this exam actually tests your mental strength and how you can actually just like balance things out. Um, and I don't know if the rest of you guys agree with me on that, but like I think it's something super like that no one talks about that you should definitely emphasize. Like whether it's like going to the gym once a day, whether it's doing something that you enjoy. Don't just lock yourself in a room or else you're not gonna achieve your full potential.
Yeah, I think kind of going off of what everyone else said, kind of tying it back to some of the strategies I used to begin with. So, kind of like during that period in the summer where I was just reviewing the content, one of the things I think Parth mentioned was Anki, which you may or may have not heard of. It's typically more common among medical students to use, and it's a active recall spaced repetition software. I don't know all the details about it, but essentially what it is it's a flashcard program. And the way it's built is that the algorithm of Anki helps you to retain information for a long period of time. So whether it be 3 months you're studying for this exam or you have like a 6-month study window, it's important that you're retaining some of that information because it's a lot of information that you're going to need to know. So doing Anki or like doing the flashcards regularly will help you to keep that information in your head longer. And then of course with the study material or with the practice problem material, like everyone else was saying, the practice tests, I would normally what I would do is I would take them every Saturday during the week, couple of months like leading up, and then I would do like skip a week maybe here or there, but then towards like the date of my exam, I would just take a practice exam like every Saturday. And then the next day, Sunday, would be like the day where I just purely review that test. And I wouldn't do anything else other than review that test. And then I think another thing that's really important to note is to always keep track of like what you're getting wrong and like what you're getting right as well, whether it be on the exams or on your practice exams, because there's just so much information, and the more data you keep about like how well you're doing in a certain section or a certain topic, the easier it's going to be for you to like pinpoint exactly what you need to work on when it comes closer to your test, what you want to brush up on and stuff like that. So I kept an Excel sheet where for every like major full length exam, I would kind of detail like, okay, this is what I got right, this is what I got wrong. And then I would say like, what is the reason I got this wrong? Was it a gap in my knowledge? And do I need to go back to review content? Or is it more of like a kind of test taking strategy issue where I just didn't understand how to apply that concept? So that's what I would say. And of course, burnout is definitely real, and it's really important to, I think like taking a day for sure, like every week to just not focus on the MCAT will be very helpful, and it'll be beneficial in the long run.
Anyone else on our panel like to add any study strategies?
Oh, I mean, this is kind of a study strategy, but like, I guess like one thing, like when you are reviewing your, like when you're like reviewing your exams, right? I think like Rehan mentioned this is like, you kind of like have to understand like why you got the question right and why all of the other questions are wrong. Like there'd like be points where I was like, oh, I don't really need to review this, right? Or like there'd be an answer choice where I knew the content and an answer choice where I didn't know the content, and I wouldn't review the answer choice where I didn't know the content. And then that same content would reappear in another passage or something along the lines of that, right? So like as much as practicing is important, like I would argue that like reviewing is just as important, if not more, because like like yes, like this is like a content based exam, but it's also like just as like important. You need to like develop like critical thinking skills, right? Like during game day, like you're gonna see content that you've never seen before. They're gonna throw the same concepts that you've learned into new ways. So you kind of have to be able to like push through that and like calm yourself down and like kind of be level-headed. And like just practicing a lot, reviewing everything, I think is definitely extremely helpful. And same thing with Anki. I probably did Anki like every single day when I was studying for my exam. One of the decks, well, two of the decks I would recommend. There's one called like Miles Down, and there's one called Jack Sparrow. Both are pretty helpful. You can just find them online if you search them up.
Awesome. Deb, did you want to add anything to the conversation about study strategies that we haven't already mentioned?
Not necessarily. I think everyone
Okay.
kind of grabbed the gist of it.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, let's continue on. All right, here's the big one, right? How do you manage to study for schoolwork while also studying for the MCAT? That's the big one. Anyone can go for this one.
Yes, this was definitely something that I was concerned about because I was doing a lot of my practice during my semester. So what I had done in the planning was with my advisor, I sort of sat down and gone, okay, this is the semester I think I'm going to be practicing for the MCAT. So I specifically tried to make that semester a bit lighter. So the semester before I had taken 18 credits. I think the fall 22 semester, which is when I was studying, I took like 13 or 14 credits. And the major class with that was biochem. And the benefit of taking biochem at that time is you got to study for the MCAT anyway, so it doesn't really affect you too much. But I think, as with everything, it's a lot of time management in terms of you set yourself certain targets and you say, okay, every week I want to do X, Y, and Z. And you go, okay, I want to get through these many questions from this section. And you try and hit those targets as aggressively as you can and be consistent with those. if you try to like cram it in the last weekend, it's going to be very difficult to get volume in. So you have to split it and be very, very dedicated, disciplined, and consistent with the way you do it. And of course, it makes a difference in terms of what materials you're using. So sort of also leaning back to study strategies, and Sagat was talking about how important it is to, analyze what you did wrong. A lot of the MCAT is passage based. And so when you see the passage, a lot of the work you have to do is to analyze what's on that passage. So in order to understand how to analyze it, you sort of have to train yourself onto AAMC logic to think the way they think. And so one of the ways I managed my schoolwork along with trying to get that was I used a third-party bank for the majority of the time up until about the last month and a half. And so in general, third-party banks, my experience has been they're a little bit more focused on details, especially the Kaplan one. And the curves that they show you are a little bit more disheartening because they sort of force you to do more work to try and get a better score. But they often don't have the same logical reasoning requirements as the AMC does. So while I was in the early part of the semester, I was making sure that I was scheduling in time for the Kaplan banks and I was doing Kaplan questions. But as I came closer towards my exam date, I changed my like weekly goals from being Kaplan to being AAMC. So I was saying, okay, I want to do this question bank from the AAMC and I want to do these materials, or I want to do this practice test. And again, I think Rayon mentioned that he was doing exams on Saturday and then reviewing them over the weekend as well. I did something similar. I did once when you split it, I did about like 1 or 2 exams a month up until the last month and a half, at which point I was doing 1 exam a week and then practice questions. So again, I think as a whole, it's just being cognizant of how much time each class is going to take and sort of planning that out in advance is helpful. And then being really quite frank about how much you can accomplish in a week. You know how much you have to do anyways. You know your other extracurriculars, you know how much time they take. And so you sort of set a goal in terms of, okay, I have this much time, I can do these many questions. I want to hit these many questions every single week consistently.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said, Parth. Like, I think to add to it, I'm probably not the best to answer this question because I really struggled studying during the school year. But it's important, like, especially like if you want to like matriculate, like right after you graduate, and, the big thing is like I think it's important to start studying that sophomore year summer and really try to grind out that sophomore year summer because then if you could take it by the start of your junior year, like you're golden. Like you're golden. Like that's like the dream. Obviously for me, I ended up taking it my August before my senior year. And it delayed a lot of things and caused a lot of hiccups and stuff. But it's important to just grind out during the summer. Also I kind of tried to get all my hard classes out of the way before, so I finished like biochem by the end of my sophomore year, and I'm a public health major and just took public health electives and classes like that to start out my junior year. So like things like that kind of give me more time. Um, but yeah, it's important to like find that balance, like force yourself to just study, even if it's a Saturday, get in the library and just kind of grind it out.
All right, some good tips. We will move on. When should students take the MCAT? And these are just based on your experience. When would you say would be the best times for students to take the MCAT?
I would say it's beneficial to take it as early as possible, but I would highly recommend having taken biochem before because there's a lot of biochem on there, and biochem is a subject that is kind of hard to just figure out on your own. The chem phys, even though chem phys doesn't technically have like biochem in the name like biochem does, it has biochem as well, as does biochem. So you want to make sure that you're solid on that, and obviously you've taken like the major chemistry classes, and you've probably taken bio 1, bio 2, I'd say genetics. Cell and molecular biology is helpful, but it's not necessarily needed. But yeah.
Yeah, just to like add on to what Parth said, he was completely right about biochem. I remember on my MCAT and in my chem phys section, I counted. At the end, I had 5 biochem passages. I don't even know why. It was just, I guess it was just that exam. But I think one like important thing that Parth said was like the classes you take beforehand. Um, Genetics extremely important. Something like microbio could help too. Um, even cell and molecular. I'm taking that class right now. I feel like there's a lot of overlap between that biochem and just normal cell bio. But I think one thing that Manis mentioned was actually great too. Like if you can take it like right after your summer of like sophomore year, it really does like save like a lot of like it just saves a lot of time like during your school years. So like that you could put it towards like other extracurriculars such as getting clinical hours, getting research. But unfortunately sometimes that's not possible because you have to like have like a dedicated study period. So in that case, like if you want to take it later and during your school year, I know they don't offer exams between the months of October to December. So, taking it in January, like right after your December break will set you up nicely because you have like 3 weeks to just grind out as much content as possible without having to worry about basically anything else.
I do also think that it really does depend on kind of where you are in your studies as well, because a lot of people don't know like how long they want to spend to study for their exam, if they want to do like 3 months, 6 months, or even more than that. So what I always like from my friends who always ask me for MCAT advice, I always tell them like to always do a diagnostic test, like just before they even start studying. It's going to be very humbling, like you're going to get a very terrible score because you haven't even started studying yet, but it shows you like your baseline, like what you don't know at all, what you do know, and like how you can kind of gauge where you want to take your test. So I took like they have like a half-length blueprint exam. My score was absolutely terrible, but it showed me like how much I needed to study for it.
Yeah, I think going
Also,
off of everything. Uh, what was saying? I'm sorry. I'll just go ahead. So like what everyone else was saying, everyone is going to be on like a different timeline. And I had people or I had friends that took the MCAT within that summer between sophomore year and junior year, which is honestly a really great date. If you can make it there to that date, then I think that is the most ideal because you don't have any school, of course, to kind of get in the way. But a lot of people that I know ended up having to take it during that second semester of their junior year, whether it was in January, March, April, and even like May and even into the summer. So I want to say that if you have the opportunity to do it in that summer, if you can expedite your coursework to do that, then that's great. But don't, I would say don't put like that much pressure on yourself to do the courses quickly, rather than to like take your time and like digest everything in the course first, and then go on to review for the MCAT. Because I think sometimes when you like kind of rush through all these courses really quickly, the knowledge that you gain from them is like kind of all jumbled up, and because you learned it in such a short period of time. So, of course, it's like your decision at the end of the day. I think like any time between like that sophomore year, like summer, all the way into like that junior year summer is like perfectly fine, and it shouldn't run into any issues regarding like your application process the following year.
Thanks. Yeah, we're gonna move on to our next one. Kind of to like add what Abby said, and this is for the panel. Did your score increase from diagnostic exam to test day? Got a lot
yes.
of thoughts.
The answer is yes. So I think the biggest thing though, more than just answering that question, is you're gonna take diagnostics like throughout your time studying, and there's gonna be a week where you're gonna go up like crazy points, and there's gonna be a week where you just go down. And there's gonna be a week where you don't move, and you're gonna be like, I studied so much and nothing happened. And you're gonna get frustrated, and it's gonna be like, I'm putting my all into this, and why aren't I getting better? Um, that's more something that I want to emphasize. Like, there's gonna be those weeks where you're not gonna do good, where your score's not gonna go up, may go down, and it's important to just kind of just keep pushing and just keep seeing, okay, what can I do better this week? What can I focus on? Um, each diagnostic is different, and each time you're sitting for the exam is different. So just remember that and don't get like too freaked out if something happens.
Good advice. All right, so we're gonna kind of move on because we got more questions. All right, for the panel, what was test day like? Did anything surprise you?
I guess I can start for this one again, but oh, Parth, you want to go for it?
Go ahead.
I mean, test day was like honestly, it's very similar in the sense that it's just a bunch of people who are pretty stressed, walking in, and you kind of just give them your ID and take care of all of that. And nothing really surprised me. They give you these headphones that keep it super quiet. The one thing I will say though is that like make sure your ID is like not expired or anything like that, or you won't be allowed to take the exam. So they do check for things like that, and that would kind of suck. So make sure your like ID is up to date. Make sure you are going to the right testing location. Get there a little bit early. They give you your breaks, and everything is pretty solid. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, having taken several practice exams, the actual exam wasn't anything surprising. But actually, the process of getting in and out of the room was something I wasn't expecting. So, as Manas mentioned, you should get there early because it's helpful. And sometimes there's a line outside the door. You get a locker to put your stuff in. It's not particularly big, so plan accordingly. And then every time you go in and out of the room, they make you like take out your pockets and show that there's nothing in there. If you wear glasses, like I wear glasses, so you have to take off your glasses and they like look at it over, which I mean, I don't know what that was for, but okay. And then you have to, whenever you go in and out of the room, someone has to basically escort you in and out. So when you're done, you have to raise your hand and someone comes and they take you out, and then same thing to go back in. So the entire process is not just like you walk in, you walk out. You have to scan your palm every time you walk back in and when you walk out to make sure it's the same person. So the 10-minute break is more like 7 minutes when you factor in all the other stuff, and the half an hour break is more like 20-25 minutes. And those numbers can change based on how many people are leaving and entering at the same time. So if there's a bunch of people leaving at the same time, they finish the section at the same time, it's going to be a shorter amount of time. So you have to just keep that in mind. And in terms of when you're actually sitting there, so it's going to be a desktop computer. You're going to sort of have like a cubicle type of thing, so you won't really be too bothered. They give you either earplugs or like these headphone things that do an okay job of canceling noise. But yeah, when you're doing practice exams, it's really helpful to try and simulate the actual test day as closely as possible. So if you're not used to using a mouse, then plug in a mouse and try and use a mouse. That way you get used to that. Be a bit more dedicated and disciplined with your breaks. Like only allow yourself if it's a 10-minute break, only give yourself 10 minutes. If it's a half an hour break, only give yourself half an hour. And obviously, your body, how much sugar and how much energy you need to function. So planning that out in advance means that the adrenaline on test day doesn't really freak you out too much. You kind of have to, it sounds a bit silly, but you have to plan out what you're going to eat, when you're going to eat it to be the most optimized. And you sort of figure it out through practice exams. You go, okay, I'm going to have this protein bar during this break, and I won't have anything during the next break or whatever it may be. But yeah, it's a lot of just trying to simulate it beforehand to try and limit the surprises you have. But yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with Parth said there. In terms of the breaks, during when you're practicing like at home and like the comfort of your own space and stuff, you're gonna be able to maximize like that break all the way until it like finishes. But on the actual test day, you do have to account for, like Parth said, raising your hand, going outside, and then doing whatever you want, whether it's like eating a snack or going to the bathroom and then coming back in, and there's an entire process of scanning your palm in, checking your pockets, belongings, glasses if you take them out with you. Another thing I want to mention is that the test itself on the computer, the proctors themselves can't like control like when they resume the test or when they stop the test. So as soon as your section ends, your time immediately starts. And then that means like if you want to leave that room, then you have to immediately raise your hand. And then if, for example, if there's like a long line to get back in and you don't check in by the time that your test starts, the test will automatically start, and your timer will be going for the next section. So if you can, something I didn't do, but that would be really helpful would be to just like time your breaks, but during like your practice sessions, like try to use less than the amount of time like given to you, like probably around 7 minutes. like 6 minutes or so. Also, another thing that is really important is like what you're actually able to write on during the exam day. So at first when I started studying, I was just using like paper or like sometimes even like my iPad, I would just write on it. But they give you a kind of like a dry erase, not really a dry erase, but like almost like laminated paper with like a permanent marker. And then you're able to write on that. You have like plenty of those sheets that you can kind of go through, and you can get as many of those booklets as you want, and depending on how much you write. So I would also practice writing like with that, because that definitely is like something different from what you maybe normally used to writing on or like doing practice problems on as well.
Okay, so good advice. We're gonna go to like our last question, and then there's a couple of other things. How long in advance did you schedule your exam?
Well, I guess I can start off again for this one. So I scheduled it about like 3 months in advance, but the thing about these exams is that like they do fill up, but like the time comes on for your exam. Like me personally, like, I did move my exam, and it gets more and more expensive the closer to the date that you actually move your exam. What I tell people a lot of the times is that like let's say you're studying right now, it's February and you want to take it in March. If you go look at the closest centers, I can almost guarantee you that none of them will have an opening. But you look the like about 2 weeks before the centers are gonna open, the centers 2 weeks before your exam, there will be openings because people will move their exams and stuff like that. So you can kind of schedule how you want, but I think like if I were to do a redo, I would schedule it like literally 2 weeks in advance. That's only because I also moved my exam a whole bunch of times, but that's also that can be seen as controversial advice as well, based on the person.
I forget because I know they like drop the exam dates like 6 months before, like I think like for summer dates they release them in like January, February. I kind of forget how they do it. But at least for me, yeah, contrary to what Manna said, so I'm from Canada, so I have very limited testing centers like in my country. So where I was from, there was only like 2 testing centers in my province, or that were like feasible for me to get to. So I had to be kind of strategic with where I wanted to book them and when, because I knew like if I looked kind of like a little bit earlier, I wouldn't have been able to get a spot. So maybe it doesn't work for everyone, especially with your area and how many testing centers you have available to you.
Good point. Anyone else?
I think I scheduled it a couple of months in advance, but one of the things that I actually got as advice from some seniors when I was a sophomore was actually with scheduling your second exam. So what they said was when you're doing your prep, you have one exam day and that's your basically D-Day in your brain. You go, okay, this is the date. But what they said was when you take that exam, you don't know how you're going to do or how you did until a month after. And it's very easy to lose a lot of information that month if you're not practicing. So it's much harder to like lose momentum and pick it back up than it is to just maintain what you were doing and continue practicing. So what they had said was after you take your exam, you can't have two test schedules at the same time. So you take one, and then after you do it, schedule another one out in advance so that you still have a window to cancel and get some money back. You won't get all of it, so it's a bit expensive from that way. But by doing that, you just keep maintaining your momentum and you don't have to go, oh, I took the exam, I forgot half the stuff, and I have to start over, which is tremendously frustrating and a lot harder to do, just mentally and also just like from trying to recall all that stuff, than it is to just keep continuing. So I was lucky I only had to take the exam once. But I did have a second one scheduled just in case. So I got the results within a month after, and then I went, okay, I'm happy with this result. I don't need to take another one, and I canceled that one.
All right. So this is just a screenshot of like some of our resources. By the way, I've been getting a lot of messages in the chat. There will be time for questions, but just to kind of give an idea of like the breakdown of the exam that our panel talked about. We have workshops every winter semester, so just kind of be aware of that as well. Also, we have practice exams here at the testing center. So I'm going to show y'all in a bit, like some of the mock exams that we have for spring break. But also you don't have to, like a lot of students aren't here during spring break. So you're more than welcome to just schedule a practice exam here at our testing center, you know, and we have links, you know, if you need in advance about like, you know, how to take a free MCAT, you know, practice exam. Those are those discussions. We also have our lending library here in the testing center. So we have a lot of great books here if you guys want to, because as y'all know, they're very expensive. But we will lend it for you guys for free if you need it. So you guys can always stop by as well. We have our Pinterest page for any guidance or articles or videos or any prep as well. And if, you know, as the panel talks about, you know, those you know, managing your schedule many at a time. So you can always meet with one of our PACs. They are experts at, you know, creating a schedule for you. So if you need help creating a schedule, you know, to take that time to study for the MCAT while also studying for schoolwork, managing yourself, that life school balance, as many of our panel talked about, you can always make an appointment on Navigate with our peer academic consultants. In addition to that, if you want more information, for those of y'all who are on that pre-health track, you can also meet with our pre-health consultants. They're located in Melman in room 317. You're more than welcome to make an appointment with them if you have other questions outside of just test taking, moving forward into the next level. So these are the spring break mock exams that we have for spring break. You're welcome to reserve your seat. It is limited, but we do the whole stimulation, just kind of like what our panel says. So you're going to come in and we're going to check your pockets. We're going to make sure that your ID's here. You know, you take away your phones. Everything has to be put away, things like that. When you take a break, you can't have access to your phone. It's going to be like a real life stimulation. And spots are limited. Please don't do what some students do, which I've noticed every semester, where they book more than one MCAT. They'll do two, or it's like, I'm sure the panel will say, that's not going to benefit you taking an MCAT on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, because why? So just be mindful, it's for your benefit, just one spot only as well. All right, so right now I'm going to kind of stop sharing this and, you know, going to get into any questions that anyone might have for our panel. You're more than welcome to ask them out loud or put them in the chat. So we're just going to give some people time and to ask our panel if any questions they would like.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Yeah, so just a quick question for you guys. So I'm currently a freshman, and I already took Chem 1, I already took Bio 1, and currently I'm taking Bio 2, and I'm taking Chem 2, and I'm also taking medical terminology. So, and I'm part of the BSDO program. And I was just wondering, like, what are some classes you guys think besides the mandatory classes that I should take in order to prepare for the MCAT? And when exactly should I take those classes?
So I think some classes that helped me at least. So I'm a psych minor. So I did the psych minor for basically it's called like the psychology minor for pre-health. And I took pretty much a psych class and sometimes a social class once a semester. And I found that really kind of helped me like when I got to do my prep, because I really didn't even have to look at psych soc at all, because I had already taken like at least 4 or 5 classes in that field. So it kind of reduced the amount of prep I had to do. So I would at least like just suggest maybe taking like intro to psychology, and like if you can fit it in your schedule, like intro to sociology as well. But also like don't feel the need to like force it into your schedule if you're like overworking yourself. I wouldn't say it's like anything mandatory or anything like that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So Rayhan did answer a question that someone had. Did any of you take the MCAT before you took biochem? If so, any advice to take self-study? Rayhan answered, did not take the MCAT prior to taking biochem, and I honestly would not recommend doing it without taking it, since biochem is one of the biggest topics on the exam. So thank you so much, Rayhan, for answering that as well. Another question in the chat, do you have to take genetics? It's not required for my major, but I might be able to make room for it in my academic plan. And Abby said, yes, I did. Anyone else advice about genetics? Go ahead.
Sorry, I meant what I said is I took my MCAT before I took biochem, but
Okay,
I'm also
sorry. Go.
I was fortunate enough that I have a background in biochem because I took biochem courses in high school. So I was lucky enough to like not necessarily need that much prep in biochem, so that's a different case. But I can type in chat like what I recommend to self-study for that as well.
Okay, awesome. What about genetics? Anyone else want to add about the genetics?
I'd say genetics is pretty helpful. I took it the semester right before I took the MCAT with biochem. The reason why I say genetics is really important is like not only the content of genetics, but a lot of the passages that you'll be reading in both biochem and both in the bio and biochem section, as well as maybe even the chem phys section, are going to have like terminology from genetics that is really helpful to know. So if you know some of that terminology and you know how some of these like techniques work and how to interpret the results of different experiments, then that'll just help you like understand the passage better to answer the questions. But I wouldn't say it's like completely necessary.
So I think we had another question. I believe it was Felipe. I'm not sure if he's still here. I have a question. Okay, I think he stepped out. Okay, so here we go. Self-study. Okay, biochem. So I was Abby answering. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions for the panel, whether it's in the chat or you can just ask out loud?
Something I just wanted to add. I mean, this is kind of not related to anyone's question. But I know when people are studying for the MCAT, a big thing that people like to look at is like Reddit. Personally, I never used Reddit until I started studying for the MCAT. And Reddit is a great tool, in my opinion, in order to like see like, oh, I got this question wrong, you're gonna put the question in, and they're gonna explain to you what the correct answer is and why. But don't look at Reddit to be like to compare yourself as an applicant to other people, because some of these people are just there to scare you, if that makes sense, you know. Like don't use Reddit, like in my opinion, don't use Reddit unless you figure out an answer, like a question, an answer to a question and its explanation, like for example, a practice question. I'm not sure if other people agree with me on that, but I feel like that really stressed me out at a certain point when I just became super into Reddit, and just reading these posts and stuff. Like it's not worth it. So yeah.
Thank you for adding that. So we did have a question in the chat that Rayhan answered. What is more important class to take before the MCAT, anatomy or microbiome? Anatomy, Rayhan says, taking anatomy as a senior right now, and there is so much overlap with the content in the biology section. Okay, so that was for our chat. Anyone else want to ask any questions for the panels or in the chat? Do you recommend taking a prep course, or does it not make a big difference from self-studying? That was the question from Emily. Anyone like to take on that one?
Yeah, so I took a Kaplan prep course. It was like a live online course. My experience was they didn't really go over that much content, so I didn't find it massively helpful. They did give you like some strategies and things like that, which, you know, they don't hurt, but I think you can definitely accomplish about 99% of that just by self-studying. But the one thing I would say is if you're someone who struggles with getting a good, consistent, you know, schedule with it, some of the third-party services, they do offer like something where they plan out something for you. So they'd say, you know, this week you should be doing this, this, and this, and then you just sort of do what they say, and it helps to pace you. But you know, you can, if you're trying to save money because the prep courses are really quite expensive, and you believe that you can schedule things properly, I don't think it's strictly necessary.
Let's see, do we have any other questions? Because I have a lot of people, like I got labs. So I'm just gonna give it like another minute. If we don't have any questions, then we'll just close it out. That way everyone has their questions answered. I had a few questions about this recording that we're doing today. So this is brought to you by Student Success, the director, Amelia Lorenzo. has access to the recording. So you're more than welcome to reach out to him. Of course, you can also reach out to me at mmellon@nova.edu, and I can forward your information to Emilio Lorenzo. All right. So if we don't have any other questions, thank you once again for our panel today. We appreciate you sharks coming in, like answering some questions, telling us like real life examples of what it's like to take the MCAT as a student here at NSU. So thank you again for taking the time to answer our questions and just tell us your perspective. So thank you again. But I'll stay online a little bit longer in case there's any resource questions that you guys have. But thank you once again for meeting with us today. I hope you guys have a great day and good luck on your labs for those of you guys who are messaging me about going to your labs. All right, take care, everyone. All right, panel, good job, guys. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. See you guys later.
All right, take care.
Bye.
I apologize. Good question. Could you please repeat what email I could reach you guys at for the recording?
For the recording, yes. Let me put his email down. What's that? So
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
so that is Emilio Loren. So
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. My question was being answered, my Zoom crashed, so thank you.
no, it's of course, you can always follow up with any other questions you have, but it's nice meeting you.
Awesome. Thank you.
No problem. All right,
Hey,
Dan.
Mary, I just had a question for you. First of all, I just want to say I'm sorry for not interacting too much during the thing. I had something going on, like
Oh no,
while
it's okay.
I'm really, and I also didn't feel like I was like too like applicable to like answer the questions in the first place since I took my MCAT once. I didn't get the score I wanted, so